Well, hello everyone and welcome to week 57 of my life as an L3 CTS cadet pilot. It's week 26 in New Zealand, and what have I been up to this week? Well, I can confirm I have now completely finished on the Cessna 172 G1000 aircraft. Roll titles. So the flights that I've finished up on the Cessna with are 3 IFR en route flights. 2 of them are student piloting commands. And I'm going to talk about all 3 flights as usual. Got the map up behind me. It's going to be particularly useful in this episode. I'm going to talk to you where I've been and a little bit about the approaches that I've been doing. So let's get cracking. So the 3 flights I actually did them pretty much back to back. I literally did IFR 1 on Wednesday, 2 on Thursday, and 3 on Friday, so it was a pretty hardcore 3 days, but really good to get those done. So the first IFR en route flight wasn't with my primary instructor actually, it was with one of the more senior instructors, so a little bit of extra pressure coming from that. Not only it was my first time doing an en route flight for an IFR aircraft. So first IFR route that I did was from Hamilton to Taronga, which Hamilton is here and Taronga is on the coast, which is a lovely tourist destination if you're ever interested in going somewhere in New Zealand. Highly recommend that. So we flew I think it was the Button 2 departure at Hamilton, so basically taking up on 18 and going straight out, and then ATC then eventually cancelled our standard instrument departure and told us to intersect en route to Taronga, and we had to, I think it was at 7,000 feet we flew us at today. Now, on that particular day, the runway 07 was in use at Taronga, and the procedure for landing on runway 07, there's 2 options. You can either do an NDB approach. Most of the Cessnas here at L3 don't have an NDB on board, so that rules that one out, and I've not been taught it at the moment, so that was impossible, which leaves us with doing a RNAV approach, basically using the GPS. Now the problem with runway 07 at Taronga is that there's quite a bit of terrain out to the west of Taronga, and you have to come over this, then descend down to intercept the top of descent on the approach plate. Now when you're at 7,000 feet, that's quite a steep rate of descent, so you've really got to be pushing at least 1,000 feet per minute descent rate just to make sure you can intercept the profile correctly. I mean, I think on the day that I flew, I literally levelled out, and within about 30 seconds I was already descending on the profile. So it's a tricky approach. Runway 25 is definitely a lot easier, but I'm glad I did runway 07. So we simulated that we didn't see the runway, although in reality we could. We initiated the missed approach, flew the missed approach procedure, and then ATC then cleared us back to Hamilton, which is where we did I think it was a VOR DME approach from runway 18 left, which I'm very familiar with from my overhead flights. So that was the first en route flight. My second en route flight, back with my normal instructor, and instead of doing Taronga, this time we did Rotorua. Surprise, surprise. I think everyone does Taronga and Rotorua as their first 2 IFR flights. It seems to be the norm. With Rotorua, on this particular day actually, there was quite a bit of weather activity around, quite a few cumuliform clouds, but nothing building into a thunderstorm, so it was fine to go in that. But yeah, we took off again. I think it was a Button 2 departure at Hamilton, runway 18 left, and I think it was, what was it? I think we used the VOR at both Hamilton and Rotorua to get to Rotorua using the airway. And once I got into the overhead hold at Rotorua, I realised it was actually quite bumpy. I think the terrain in that area was causing quite a lot of weather activity. So I literally did 1 lap of hold and went straight in for the VOR DME approach for runway 18, I think it was. Yeah, 18. Actually, I was just looking down and I've got my plates here, And a couple of things to watch out for with Rotorua. In New Zealand in general, most holding patterns are right-hand turns, but there's a few pitfalls at Rotorua, and one of the pitfalls is on the runway 18 approach, is the holding pattern overhead is a left-hand turn, so that's one thing to definitely watch out for. You don't want to go into a holding pattern and go in the completely wrong direction. That's very embarrassing. Is if ATC call you up and say, you call sign, and then, oh, op's normal, and then you realise, oh dear, I'm going around the wrong way. Very embarrassing, but thankfully I remembered I went round in left-hand turns. And another couple more pitfalls with this approach. Once you go beacon outbound, actually I'm going to show you this. I don't know if the camera's going to focus on this correctly, but I'm going to show you. So this is beacon outbound, then you make a turn inbound to should be a final approach. Now the problem is with this particular plate and the approach at Rotorua, it's designed for all category A, B and C aircraft. We're category B, but the approach, even though it's rated for all three of those categories of aircraft, it's designed for category C aircraft. So it's more designed for the Air New Zealand ATR 72, which have a much wider turning radius. So a rate 1 turn for them is a lot wider than a rate 1 turn for a Cessna 172. So the pitfall with this approach is that if you make your base turn onto final at rate 1, you will roll out and you will not be on track with the runway. And then next pitfall is top of the descent comes very soon after the base turn. So basically you need to sort of not quite do a rate 1 turn and anticipate roughly where the runway centreline should be. It's a very tricky approach, but once you've done it once, you know the pitfalls and it's doable. Another pitfall with Rotorua is most of the missed approaches I've encountered and seen, they're generally just straight out on runway heading, climb to, for example, 3,000 feet. Rotorua, that's not the case. You actually have to fly to the missed approach point and then do a turn to the right. Otherwise you're going to fly into a mountain, and yeah, that's not a very good thing. But I successfully didn't fly into a mountain, and I flew the missed approach over the missed approach point and turned right as I passed over the VOR beacon. And then after that we flew GPS back to Hamilton, and yeah, that was completely uneventful. The whole flight was a very tricky one to fly because generally there was moderate turbulence around, so I did very well to hold my altitude throughout the flight, so I'm really pleased with how that flight went. The final flight is a 2.5 hour IFR en route flight, and it's a student pilot and commander flight as well. And we sort of get given the choice of where we can go. Quite common places that people go to. Whakatane is quite a good one. It's just a little bit further than Rotorua and Tauranga, that's quite a good one, but it's not the one that I did. I flew to New Plymouth. And yeah, you can just about do New Plymouth in 2.5 hours in a Cessna 172. You do have to maintain quite a high power setting, but you can do it in that time. And we basically flew initially VOR coming out of Hamilton, but then as we got further and further away, the beacon becomes less accurate, so you have to switch on to a more reliable form of navigation, which in that case was the GPS. And as we got halfway down there, it later transpired that New Plymouth was actually quite busy at the time that we was arriving. And we ended up going into an en route hold, which is something I've never done before. It's basically the same as your normal holding pattern, but for this particular one, it was somewhere just off the coast here that I had to do this hold at, and it's basically, rather than flying times, you fly distances. So that's something quite new, so you make sure you have your en route charts for this particular flight, because that's something that's not written on the plates. And yeah, eventually it was clear to the overhead of New Plymouth, but we had to keep our speed right back, so we put a stage of flap out and got our speed right back. I think it was flying, doing about 70 knots, I think, so much slower than 110 that we normally fly at. And we had to allow 2 Air New Zealand flights in, and then once we got to, I think it was about 4 miles away from New Plymouth's overhead, we then got instructed to do the approach for runway 05, I think it was VOR DME approach, and we was asked to make best speed for the approach. As it turned out, we had another Air New Zealand flight pretty close behind us, so that was good fun. And yeah, the first part of the approach was pretty uneventful. Flew outbound till can't remember what it was. It's either a distance or a time. But then as we turned on to final, the Air New Zealand flight in front of us advised us there was actually some quite strong turbulence on short finals. And what was causing this was there was basically the wind was coming from a south-easterly direction. So basically the wind was coming over Mount Taranaki, which is an 8,000 foot mountain, tumbling down the side of it and straight over the airfield. So as we was flying the approach, initially it was quite smooth, but as we got down to about 1,500, 1,200 feet, it started to get quite rough. And even though the the minimum descent altitude, I think is about 500 feet at New Plymouth, we actually got down to about 900 feet. And in the end I just went, you know what, this is actually getting ridiculously rough, I'm going around nice and early. And it later turned out to be a very good call. Like, you've got to take information from other pilots seriously. Like, if an ATR says it's a bit rough and final and you're on a Cessna 172, it's probably going to be really rough, and I'm glad I didn't go lower on that occasion. So, pat myself on the back for that one. But because of the delays coming into New Plymouth, we was then running a bit late coming back, so almost flew the whole way back, pretty much full throttle, literally maximum continuous thrust the whole way back. And as we got towards Hamilton, we actually managed to get cleared for a visual approach, which is the most common instrument approach that is done. Most airlines prefer it because it's the most commercially expeditious. And it's basically, you start the procedure of flying the approach. So you can fly a star, although we technically can't fly a star because we're not RMP rated, because we're not in the twin star, but we call up those points and we basically fly the star, but not officially. And you start flying the star, and then once you can confirm that you can actually get to the runway without being in instrument meteorological conditions, then you can just call up and say, when you call sign up, Charlie Tango Tango, request a visual approach, and then they clear you for the visual approach for, in this case, runway 18 left. And my instructor, he played a bit of a trick on me on this occasion, because as we got on to downwind for runway 18 left, I did my standard downwind call and was cleared number 1, 18 left, and I was like, yep, cleared to land, number 1, 18 left. Thought that was going to be it, and then next thing I hear is my instructor key up on the mic and go, Charlie Tango Tango, request glide approach, and I was like, oh, you are kidding me. And sure enough, he reaches over and goes, simulate engine failure, you're going to be doing a glide approach. And I was like, oh, great, this is going to be fun. The approach flew absolutely fine, but I completely messed up the landing. I fled way too early, but hey ho, it's been a long time since I've done a glide approach, let alone in a Cessna, which drops a lot faster than the Katana does, so I was pleased to get it on the runway. A little bit of a heavy landing, but it was fine. Aircraft was still usable, and the only thing that was damaged was my pride. But with the conclusion of that flight, it actually finishes the Cessna 172 phase of the training here at L3. And what will be coming up in the next episode is the Diamond DA-42 twin star flights, and that I'm really, really looking forward to. It's one of the major things that people look forward to in the training. Like, you get here and you look up at the skies and go, oh yeah, I'm going to be flying a twin star soon. Well, in the next episode I'm going to be talking to you about that, and that is going to be well worth sticking around for. As always, thank you very much for watching. Feel free to leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, and if you know anyone who would benefit from watching this channel, feel free to share it with them. On that note, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next week. Take it easy. Bye bye.